Do you feel it? That pull inside, an echo of something ancient and divine that says, "This is not enough." What if I told you that the reason for all your longing and deepest struggles can be traced back to one simple truth, a truth that God Himself etched into stone? You shall have no other gods before me, the very first commandment. But what does this mean? How does it resonate today in a world filled with distractions, idols, and relentless demands? Get ready to uncover a mystery older than time itself, a powerful insight that has shaken kings, toppled empires, and changed the course of millions of lives. Hold on tight. We're about to journey into a divine revelation. Before we dive even deeper, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because this two-part video will completely change your life from scratch. Make sure to share it with your friends and family who need to see this. To understand the first commandment, we must journey back 3,000 years ago to a trembling mountain called Sinai. Imagine the scene. There's thunder, lightning, a voice as powerful as the ocean, and a nation holding its breath. God Himself speaks from this mountain, giving Moses the 10 Commandments. Not just rules, but a code meant to awaken people to their divine purpose. But why start with no other gods? Of all the things to say first, why did God choose this? Here's a twist you might not have heard before. It's not just a rule, it's a compass. It's a boundary that says, place your heart here and you'll find life. The first commandment isn't about restricting worship, but liberating the soul from the chains of idols. Now let's get one thing straight. When you hear idol, you might think of statues or ancient gods. But idols aren't just relics of the past. They're anything that grips your heart in place of God. They're sneaky, often beautiful, sometimes innocent at first glance. But in the end, they consume you. They can be anything: money, power, relationships, even your own ambitions. Imagine the moments in your life when something, anything, has taken over your thoughts, dominated your actions, and made you forget everything else. That's the beginning of an idol's power. Here's where it gets intense. Idols aren't just random. They're tailored to each of us. Think about that. There's a reason certain things grab us more than others. For one person, it might be the craving for attention. For another, it's that relentless pursuit of wealth. Idols take on the shape of our deepest desires and fears, but they're all illusions. They promise joy, peace, purpose, and they never deliver. You think, one more achievement, one more dollar, one more like, but every idol leaves you hollow, hungry for more. And God, knowing this, says, "Come to me. I am your source of joy. I am your peace. I am your purpose." The first commandment isn't a historical relic. It's the most relevant guidepost for today's world. We live in an age where distraction is constant. Social media feeds, endless notifications, every app fighting for your attention. But behind the noise, there's something deeper calling you, a whisper that says, "Come home, find your true worth in me, not in what the world throws at you." Think about this. What if honoring the first commandment could free you from anxiety, the endless pursuit of validation, the never enough feeling? What if the key to peace is simply turning our hearts back to God? It's one thing to understand the first commandment, and another to live it. How do we remove idols in a world so full of distractions? It starts small. Spend time in prayer, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. Reflect on God's goodness in your life. Surround yourself with people who encourage your faith. Choose God in the small moments and watch how it changes the big ones. The first commandment isn't just a rule. It's a life-giving invitation to come closer, to truly experience what it means to be loved by God. If you've made it this far, It's because you're ready for change. So here's my challenge. For 1 week, spend time every morning reflecting on this commandment. Just say, Lord, I put you first today. Let it become part of your soul, and watch what happens. Feel free to come back and share your journey with us. In a world full of demands, illusions, and countless distractions, the first commandment remains, a timeless invitation from God Himself. Have no other gods before me, because only He can fill our deepest needs. If this video stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey of faith. And don't forget to comment on what stood out to you. Together, let's rediscover the power and freedom in God's Word. Did you know that hidden within the second commandment is a truth so profound that it can shape the entire way you see the world? It says, "You shall not make for yourself a graven image." And it's not just about statues or idols of gold. This commandment is a direct challenge to something in us all, the deep desire to control, define, and limit God by our own understanding. But why would God forbid images? And what does this ancient command mean in our modern lives, filled with images and distractions? Prepare to see the second commandment in a whole new light as we journey through history, reflect on its power, and discover how it can set us free from the prisons we unknowingly build for ourselves. Let's return to the ancient desert of Sinai. Picture it: thunder rolling, lightning flashing, and Moses receiving the words of God that would shape humanity. God tells him, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image." Why is this command so important? Because at its core, it's a command that asks us to recognize the infinite nature of God, to trust in a God we cannot see, to believe in a God that we cannot fully define. But this isn't just about prohibiting statues. It's about guarding our hearts from the impulse to limit God. It's about understanding that God is beyond our control, and that in His vastness, He calls us to a relationship that isn't about images or objects, but about spirit and truth. What if the second commandment is really about freeing us? In a world that constantly pressures us to have all the answers, to see and touch and control, the second commandment says, release that grip. You don't have to control or define God. He is with you, beyond the limits of what you can create. It challenges us to lay down our idols, not just physical images, but the mental and emotional images we create, like the image of a God who exists solely to grant our desires, or a God who only fits within our comfort zones. The second commandment isn't just about statues. It's about the statues we build in our hearts, our limited ideas of who God is, our reluctance to let Him be bigger than our understanding. And God's warning is clear. When we limit Him, we limit ourselves. We miss out on the fullness of His love, His power, and His guidance. Here's a truth that's hard to swallow. We are shaped by what we see. Images have power. They can either open us to beauty and truth, or trap us in illusion. And the reason God commands us against creating images of Him is that He knows we'll be tempted to see those images as the whole truth. We might begin to think that God is just as we've imagined, forgetting that He is infinitely more. Throughout history, humans have created images and idols to represent God. But in doing so, we lose the essence of God. We make Him small, limiting the boundless creator of the universe to a mere thing. Here's a challenge. This week, every time you think of God, ask yourself, am I limiting Him in my mind? Am I holding on to an image instead of letting Him be who He truly is? Take a moment to release those limits and say, God, I trust You as You are, not as I imagine You to be. The second commandment is a call to free ourselves from illusions and embrace the reality of God as He truly is. You shall not make for yourself a graven image is an invitation to a life of faith that transcends understanding. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. This commandment is about so much more than language. It's a call to revere, to honor, and to recognize the weight of the sacred. But in our modern world, where words are thrown around like confetti, what does it mean to truly respect the name of God? Join me as we explore the mystery and meaning of the third commandment. We'll uncover what it meant thousands of years ago, why it matters today, and how it can shape the very fabric of our lives. This isn't just about words. It's about honoring the sacred. To grasp the full power of the third commandment, let's start with understanding the phrase, in vain. It doesn't just mean carelessly or lightly, as we might assume. In ancient Hebrew, in vain means empty, worthless, or false. This command is about respecting the holiness of God's name, the essence of His being. The Lord's name is powerful, it's sacred, and it's deeply connected to who He is. So why would God command us not to take His name in vain? Because God's name represents His character, His power, and His covenant with us. When we misuse it, we diminish our respect for Him, treating the sacred as common, as if it were an everyday thing. And there's something profoundly dangerous in that. In ancient times, a person's name wasn't just a label. It carried the essence of their identity. To know someone's name was to know something essential about them. Now imagine that concept with the name of God. To say God is to invoke the Creator, the Almighty, the source of all life and love. His name has the power to create, to heal, and to transform. It's no wonder He commands us to treat it with respect. But in today's world, we've lost the sense of reverence for names. The sacredness of language has been diluted, and when we misuse God's name, we're robbing it of the honor it deserves. This commandment reminds us to stop, reflect, and realize that some things are too holy to be treated as common. Taking God's name in vain isn't just about saying God casually. It's about how we represent Him in our lives. When we claim to follow God, we carry His name in everything we do. But what happens when our actions don't reflect His character? When we act with anger, hatred, or dishonesty while claiming to represent Him, we're taking His name in vain. This is where the third commandment takes on a profound depth. It calls us to live in a way that honors God's name in both word and deed. This is why Jesus spoke about letting our yes be yes and our no be no. Our actions should reflect God's love, justice, and mercy, and when they don't, we're misrepresenting Him. We're emptying His name of its truth and power. Reflect on this for a moment. When people look at your life, do they see God's love and grace? Or do they see something else? This isn't about judgment. It's about growth. Share your thoughts in the comments. How can we all live more fully in a way that honors God's name? The third commandment reminds us that words aren't just sounds. They're vessels of meaning. God's name, spoken in reverence, carries power. Imagine if we treated every mention of His name with the weight it deserves, speaking it with awe, humility, and love. How would that change the way we speak, the way we live? Misusing God's name doesn't just disrespect Him, it affects us too. When we speak casually about the sacred, we lose our sense of awe. Our faith becomes something ordinary, something small. But when we reclaim the reverence due to God's name, we open ourselves to a deeper, more powerful faith. God calls us to protect His name because in doing so, we protect the sanctity of our relationship with Him. When we hold His name in reverence, we remind ourselves of His greatness, His holiness, and our connection to Him. So how can we live in a way that honors God's name? Here are some ways to start. Be mindful of your words. Speak God's name with respect, and use your words to uplift, encourage, and bless others. Represent God's character in your actions. Show love, kindness, and humility in everything you do. Spend time in prayer and reflection, asking God to help you honor Him, not only in word, but in deed. This isn't about rules or restrictions. It's about living a life that reflects God's love and truth. The third commandment calls us to live authentically, to let our words and actions align with the God we serve. Here's a challenge. For the next 7 days, commit to honoring God's name in everything you say and do. Let it shape your words, your actions, your heart. Watch how this reverence deepens your connection to Him. Come back and share your experiences with us. Let's grow in faith together. The third commandment, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain," is a call to live in reverence. It's an invitation to honor the holy, to respect the sacred, and to let our words and actions reflect the God we love. Imagine being handed a gift, a day to set aside every worry, every responsibility, every care, a day to find rest and renewal, a day given to you by God Himself. That's what the fourth commandment offers. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. But in a world driven by productivity, where rest feels like a luxury, this commandment is often forgotten or misunderstood. So what is the Sabbath? Why did God command us to set aside one day for rest? And how can rediscovering this ancient practice change your life in ways you never expected? Join me as we unpack the meaning of the Sabbath and uncover a truth that has the power to transform our souls. To truly understand the Sabbath, let's go back to the beginning, to the creation of the world. In 6 days, God created everything: the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that lives. But on the seventh day, He did something extraordinary. He rested, not because He was tired, but to set a rhythm, to show us something essential about our own need for rest and reflection. The Sabbath isn't just about taking a break. It's a sacred pause. It's an invitation to reconnect with God, to acknowledge that He is the source of all things, and to recognize that life isn't just about constant doing, but about being in communion with Him. When God tells us to remember the Sabbath, He's calling us back to the original rhythm He designed for us. God commands us to keep the Sabbath holy, which means set apart, unique, and sacred. The Sabbath is more than just time off. It's a day that's meant to be different from every other. It's a day to put aside our ordinary routines, to step away from the grind, and to enter a space that's dedicated to the divine. In today's world, we tend to see time as something to maximize, to fill with productivity. But God tells us to make this day holy, because it's a day meant to remind us of who we are, not slaves to work, but children of God. It's a reminder that our worth isn't defined by what we do, but by who we are in Him. In a culture that idolizes hustle and productivity, the Sabbath is an act of resistance. The world says, do more, achieve more, be more. But the Sabbath says, stop, rest, be with God. It's a declaration that our identity isn't tied to our work or achievements, but to our Creator. When we honor the Sabbath, we break free from the demands of the world. We declare that God, not work, is our true source. It's a reminder that our lives are not our own to control, but gifts to cherish. Science backs it up. Rest is essential for our bodies, our minds, and our souls. But the Sabbath offers something deeper than physical rest. It's a day of spiritual renewal, a time to step away from the noise, to breathe, to reset. It's about reconnecting with God, remembering who we are, and finding peace in the simplicity of being. Studies show that people who take a day to rest, especially when they focus on spiritual or family time, experience lower stress, greater happiness, and even better health. But the Sabbath isn't just about these benefits. It's a gift from God, a time to align our hearts with His, to find true renewal that goes beyond rest. If this message inspired you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to join us on this journey for the second part as well. Share this video with someone who could use a reminder of the power of honor, and comment below with your thoughts. Let's walk together in the blessing of God's commandments.